The original PlayStation might look like a tiny gray box from another era, but don't let that fool you. This thing was pushed to its absolute limit by developers who clearly didn't care about things like hardware restrictions or common sense. From insane technical showcases to games that straight up looked impossible at the time, the PS1 built a library that still feels ridiculous even today. If you've ever wondered how far this console was really pushed, here are 15 of the most impressive PS1 games that almost made it melt. When we talk about games that almost melted the PS1, Metal Gear Solid isn't just on the list, it is the list. While every other dev was leaning on pre-rendered backgrounds or grainy FMVs to look cinematic, Kojima's team built a custom engine that handled gameplay and cutscenes in real time. The technical wizardry here is insane. To keep those 30 frames steady, the code was hand-optimized in assembly to squeeze into the PS1's tiny cache. They used aggressive overlays to swap data in and out of RAM constantly, allowing for incredible environmental details like footprints in the snow or breath visible in the freezing air. And speaking about that, the stealth here was revolutionary, as guards reacted to those footprints in the snow and even the sound of your footsteps on metal. But the real genius was the fourth wall breaks. Having a boss like Psycho Mantis that literally read and mocks your memory card, or being told to find a radio frequency on the back of the actual physical game case was mind-blowing. It's dense, it's philosophical, and yeah, it's got enough dialogue to be a Netflix series, but Metal Gear Solid is the definitive proof that the PS1 could deliver a legendary, adult-tier epic. If you want to see the exact moment the PlayStation 1 started sweating bullets, look no further than Vagrant Story. Released in 2000 by the Dream Team behind Final Fantasy Tactics, this isn't just an RPG, it's a technical miracle. While other games relied on flat, pre-rendered backgrounds to look good, Vagrant Story went full 3D, pushing a level of geometric density that feels like a PS2 prototype running on a gray little brick. The cinematic direction here is unreal. We're talking real-time cutscenes with dramatic camera pans and facial expressions that arguably look better than early PS2 titles. And to squeeze this much out of the console, the devs used genius hacks like painting the lighting directly onto textures to simulate a rim light effect. Combat-wise, it's a hybrid of real-time movement and tactical precision, letting you target specific limbs. But be warned, the depth is staggering. Between the risk system that rewards aggression but kills your defense, and a weapon crafting suite so dense you'll need a spreadsheet, this game doesn't hold your hand. It might be the most hardcore game on the system, but as the only PS1 title to ever score a perfect 40 over 40 from Famitsu, it's a mandatory play for anyone who respects the grind. Gran Turismo 1 was already pushing about 75% of the hardware, but the wizards at Polyphony Digital went back in and squeezed out that last 25% until the PS1 was basically sweating pixels. We're talking nearly 650 cars and 27 tracks, an absurd scale that literally couldn't fit on a single CD, and still feels ridiculous for 32-bit hardware. To top it off, they used clever lighting tricks to give cars a polished sheen and added 3D depth to the wheels that made every other racer look like a toy. It wasn't just about the looks, though. The simulation depth here is borderline obsessive, with a physics engine that calculates weight transfer and drivetrain differences so accurately, it feels like a driving school disguised as a game. It even introduced rally racing, just to flex on the competition. But that ambition came at a price. GT2 was so packed that the code started fraying at the edges, as early versions had legendary bugs that could literally delete your entire garage or make a 100% completion impossible. It's a gorgeous, over-ambitious masterpiece that proved you could fit a world-class simulator into a gray box from 1994. Round 1. Fight! Remember when people thought the PlayStation was just for jagged 3D blocks? Then Namco dropped Tekken 3 and practically rewrote the hardware's DNA. When this dropped in '98, nobody believed the PlayStation 1 could actually handle it. We're talking about a port of an arcade beast that ran on much beefier tech, yet Namco pulled off a god-tier optimization miracle. To pull this off, the devs swapped the arcade's 3D backgrounds for clever 2D panoramic bitmaps, freeing up every ounce of the PS1's limited RAM to focus entirely on the fighters. And the result was mind-blowing. Highly detailed character models running at a buttery smooth 60 FPS, and some of the best motion capture animation of the era, making every high kick and backflip feel incredibly weighted and responsive. It even introduced the universal sidestep, turning the arena into a true 3D chess match where movement actually mattered. Sure, we all have trauma from that one friend who spammed Eddie Gordo's kicks until the controller gave up, and the Tekken Force mode was a bit of a repetitive slog, but the sheer amount of content, from the addictive Tekken Ball to those iconic CG endings, is insane. It's a 96 rated masterclass in optimization that moved 8 million copies and proved you didn't need a PS2 to experience the future of fighting games. Wipeout 3 Special Edition is essentially the PlayStation 1 screaming for mercy while delivering a masterclass in technical wizardry. Released exclusively in Europe in 2000, this wasn't just a content dump. It was Psygnosis squeezing every last drop of power out of a console that was already 6 years old. While most PS1 racers lived in a jagged 240p nightmare, this beast pushed a high-resolution 512 by 256 mode and native widescreen that makes it look decades ahead of its time. We're talking cleaner textures, minimal pop-in, and a rewritten renderer designed specifically to kill those classic PS1 wobbly polygons. The content is equally insane, cramming the original tracks plus 8 remastered circuits from the first 2 games into one definitive package. But the real hardware flex? The Link cable support. You could hook up 2 consoles and 2 TVs for a lag-free 4-player futuristic massacre that honestly shouldn't be possible on 1994 hardware. It's fast, it's punishingly difficult on Phantom Class, and it remains the most polished, visually stunning swan song the original PlayStation ever received. If you want to see a CPU hit its absolute limit, this is it. Remember when developers used to actually optimize games instead of just praying for a day one patch? Released in 2000s, when everyone was already staring at the PS2, Insomniac Games decided to squeeze every last drop of power out of that 33 MHz CPU with Spyro Year of the Dragon. We're talking about levels roughly 200% larger than the previous game, featuring a draw distance that somehow deleted the era's notorious fog of war. They pulled this off using a genius level of detail engine that rendered 2 versions of the world simultaneously. The result? Massive, vibrant worlds with zero pop-in, expressive animations, and a buttery smooth frame rate that puts modern AAA launches to shame. But the real kicker is the variety. Between the skating levels that feel like a dragon-themed Tony Hawk, 6 different playable characters, and a literal secret brain that adjusts the difficulty in real time based on how much you suck, the technical overhead is wild. Plus, it features the most savage anti-piracy tech in history. If you played a cracked copy, the game would literally delete your save file right at the final boss. It's peak retro greatness and one of my favorite games on the PS1. Next up, we have Ace Combat 3 Electrosphere. And honestly, it's a miracle this game didn't actually set the PlayStation 1 on fire. While the Western version got butchered into a single-disc shell of its former self, the Japanese original is a sprawling 2-disc sci-fi epic that feels like it's time-traveled from the future. Developed by Namco at the height of their technical wizardry, this wasn't just a flight sim, it was a multi-route anime thriller produced by the legends at Production IG. And the vibe here is pure Ghost in the Shell meets Top Gun, dealing with corporate wars and digital transcendence. The visuals are also absolute insanity for 32-bit hardware. We're talking about massive, open maps with dynamic lighting, and a custom-built level of detail system that managed to cram entire futuristic megacities and stratospheric dogfights onto the screen without the console exploding. And the planes aren't just static models either. They have moving flaps and light sourcing that makes the fuselages glint as you bank through the clouds. From night raids over neon-soaked grids to a literal mission in space, it pushed the PS1's polygon count to the breaking point while maintaining a surprisingly smooth frame rate. If you want to see what the PS1 looks like when it's screaming for mercy, grab the fan-translated Japanese version and experience the electrosphere for yourself. The PS1 basically changed everything, but by the year 2000, it was already gasping for air, with devs getting more and more unhinged, trying to squeeze out whatever was left of that hardware. And then Driver 2 shows up, trying to cram the entire DNA of a proto-GTA with a full-blown open world spread across 4 massive cities, on a machine with a measly 2 megabytes of RAM. And somehow, it actually runs. Barely, but it runs. Reflections Interactive decided that just driving wasn't enough, so they let you jump out of your car and hijack any vehicle on the road, even if it was with that peculiar way of moving around. It was basically GTA 3 a year before GTA 3 even existed. The physics were also top tier, featuring cinematic drifts and actual car damage that felt years ahead of its time. But man, the hardware was screaming. When the police chases got intense, the frame rate would tank so hard it felt like a slideshow, and the pop-in was so aggressive that skyscrapers would just manifest out of thin air 5 feet in front of your bumper. Yet, even with the glitches and the brutal difficulty, that gritty 70s cop show vibe was unmatched. Final Fantasy IX is the absolute swan song of the PS1, and one of my favorite entries in the franchise. Released in 2000, Square took everything they learned from Final Fantasy VII and VIII and pushed that 33 MHz processor into overdrive to create a literal anime in motion. The technical wizardry here is mind-blowing. We're talking about a system with only 1 megabyte of VRAM, yet the backgrounds are so lush and vibrant they feel alive. The secret? Square used FMV loops, basically layering tiny videos onto static backgrounds to animate water, clouds, and machinery without melting the GPU. And unlike the previous titles, they managed to cram 4 party members into battle simultaneously. The trade-off? The encounter load times are legendary for being slow, but that's because the PS1 is sweating blood to render those massive summons and particle-heavy magic effects. It's a masterclass in squeezing blood from a stone. Whether it's the seamless transitions from CG cutscenes straight into gameplay, or the expressive chibi-style character models that pack more personality than most modern NPCs, Final Fantasy IX is a reminder of what happens when devs master a hardware's limits. It's tight, gorgeous, and technically impressive even today. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 isn't just a sequel. It's the PlayStation 1 gathering every last bit of processing power it had left for one final, legendary flex before the PS2 arrived to claim the throne. We're talking about 240p graphics that somehow looked cleaner than 90% of the PS1 library, with textures and animations so fluid they felt like they belonged on next-gen hardware. The scale here was insane. Stages like School 2 and Venice weren't just bigger. They were packed with interactive geometry and vertical paths that the PS1's 2 megabytes of RAM had no business handling. But the real game changer? The manual. By letting you link vert tricks with street lines, Neversoft forced the CPU to calculate massive, never-ending combos and physics states in real time, all while maintaining a shockingly stable 30 FPS. Add in a full-blown level editor, a Create a Skater mode, a soundtrack that defined an entire generation's taste in music, and it's no wonder this holds a near-perfect 98 on Metacritic. It's the ultimate last hurrah for the 32-bit era.
Chaos, when the earth and the
Ever wondered what happens when the RPG wizards at Square decide to stop making turn-based epics and try their hand at some pew-pew instead? Well, that's exactly what happened with Einhander, and it's living proof that Square understood the PS1 hardware better than almost anyone else on the planet. While most 3D games back then were struggling to hit a shaky 30 FPS, Einhander screams along at a buttery smooth 60 frames per second. It takes the classic 2D shmup formula and wraps it in a gorgeous 2.5D shell, using dynamic camera angles that shift and rotate through dystopian cityscapes and colossal, multi-part bosses that feel genuinely intimidating. Each enemy isn't just a flat sprite either. They're fully realized 3D models with moving parts that break off as you blast them. And if you know anything about the PS1, you already know that 3D and 60 FPS almost never went together back then. To top it off, the depth comes from the gun pod system, where you use a mechanical arm to literally rip weapons off trashed enemies to use as your own. Whether you're mounting a massive cannon or a dual-wielding spread shot, the tactical depth of switching gun pods on the fly keeps the flow incredibly addictive. It's snappy, aggressive, and visually dense, cramming the screen with explosions and geometry that honestly look like they belong on a PS2. If the first Colony Wars was a technical miracle, its sequel, Vengeance, was Psygnosis straight up bullying the PlayStation hardware until it gave up. We're talking about massive, capital ship dogfights with lighting effects and particle physics that honestly had no business running on the PS1. The devs literally doubled the team size and rewrote the entire engine and assembly just to squeeze out 30% more speed, allowing for more ships, smoother frame rates, and planetary atmospheres that actually felt distinct from deep space. But you're not just shooting, you're using grapples to hurl asteroids, guiding remote missiles, and watching ship debris float realistically in the vacuum. It's a 40-mission epic with branching paths, multiple ship classes, a full-on upgrade system that lets you tune your ship's engines, shields, and handling, and top-tier FMVs all crammed onto a single disc through some sort of black magic optimization. Now, the catch? It's arguably one of the hardest games ever made. Some missions are so soul-crushingly difficult they feel like a personal insult, and the lack of checkpoints will move you to tears. But if you can stomach the challenge, it's a masterclass in atmosphere and technical ambition. When people talk about games that pushed the PS1 to its absolute breaking point, Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped is usually the one holding the smoking gun. Developed by Naughty Dog before they became the industry titans they are today, this game basically told the PlayStation hardware to do the impossible or die trying. The hook? Time travel. You're bouncing from medieval knights to futuristic neon cities and dogfighting in World War I biplanes. It's a masterclass in variety, though some purists argue the vehicles, like the jet ski and motorcycle, crowd out the classic platforming. But honestly, the flow is addictive. Every boss you drop grants a permanent superpower, like the double jump or the fruit bazooka, transforming old levels into your personal speedrun playground. And speaking of levels, forget that claustrophobic, fog-heavy look most 32-bit titles had. Warped features a custom-built level of detail system that lets you see up to 10 times further than the previous games without the frame rate ever breaking a sweat. It's a technical flex that makes the levels feel massive and open. We're talking dedicated sub-engines just for the jet ski, motorcycle, and plane levels, real-time ripples on the water, and character shadows that actually mirror Crash's animations. Features that should have been reserved for the PS2. Critics at the time called it the pinnacle of PlayStation rendering, and they weren't exaggerating. Think the dual-stick layout was always the standard? Then meet Ape Escape, the 1999 masterpiece that literally forced players to buy a DualShock just to hit start. While other devs were struggling to make 3D platformers feel less like clunky tanks, Japan's studio nuked the rulebook and mapped movement to the left stick and your entire arsenal of gadgets like nets, boats, and RC cars to the right, in a full-blown 3D sandbox that felt way too big for the hardware. But don't let the goofy catch the monkeys premise fool you. This was a hardware showcase. We're talking massive, vibrant levels across time periods, with a draw distance that shouldn't even be possible. But the real star is the monkey AI. Each ape has its own personality and alert levels that actually react to your footsteps and line of sight, making it feel more like a stealth action masterpiece than a kid's game. Aside from some hilariously bad voice acting, this is the direct DNA ancestor to games like Astrobot, proving that even in 1999, Sony knew how to turn a hardware gimmick into a legendary gameplay loop. Developed by the madman at Attention to Detail and published by Psygnosis, Roll Cage is one of the most insane combat racers I can remember on the PS1. The hook is simple but genius. Your cars are basically double-sided bricks with massive tires, meaning you can drive on walls, ceilings, and through tunnels at speeds that would make Wipeout blush. Flip over? Who cares? Just keep the gas floored and let the physics engine handle the chaos. However, it's not just about going fast, it's about the carnage. You're constantly cycling through missiles, shields, and power-ups, but the best part is the environmental destruction. You're leveling buildings and collapsing structures to create literal death traps on the fly. Visually, this thing is a beast. We're talking explosive lighting effects, a genuine motion blur, fully destructible trackside environments, and a sense of speed so aggressive it's actually a bit disorienting, all while maintaining a blistering frame rate. I don't know about you guys, but I've got some amazing memories playing this with my brothers. Good times. Now let me know in the comments what games we missed, and we'll be sure to get it in the next one. Thanks for watching, and consider checking out our next video on screen.